Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we're going to be taking a look at the Oblivion Night. Before we do, I do want to make an apology about the last video of this that I uploaded and the problems I had. I've talked about this in the past. I don't want to really go into it here. I'll have to do it for a separate video to talk about what's going on, but I'll make it short. So something happened when I ran this through my editing software. It removed the sound. So it didn't save any, any of the voice at all. And I was like, what? Because I did watch the video back after I made it to make sure, like, the sound was there and everything else. Then I ran my editing software. Then I uploaded. I need to start checking after I run my editing software to make sure everything is there. So, I do, again, apologize. So, moving on. The Oblivion Knight. This is one of my own creation. This is just something I came up based on the idea of, like, somebody who fights for Oblivion, like, would fight for Mehron's Dagon, or Mehrunes Dagon, against the people of Tamriel, or whatever. Somebody who leads his armies, but is of the world of Tamriel, because you would need intermediaries to do that, and this kind of is that character. Now it is a tank, so expect to see a lot of tanky type play with it, but it has a lot of unique play to it, which I really like. And again, before I get too far, my brain's a little fried right now, so I can't say the word I'm looking for. I just had it too. But basically, some clarity on the build. All my builds are just templates. They are just ideas. They are not set in stone, so if there's something about them you want to change when it comes to sets, gear, traits, Mundastones, you guys are free to do so as you see fit. I mean, everything about it is really up to the player. The thing is that these builds are just templates. They're just ideas for you to build or play from. So, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, Imperial Sorcerer. Really great combination here. 40 points in the health, 24 in the stamina. As you can see, we have a 40k health, 27k max stamina, 18k max magicka. Our mag recovery is coming in at 1752. It actually goes over 2000. And our stam recovery is coming in at 1255. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, that's like, stam recovery is really not necessary, but with the way this build plays, it's made for more small group play. It could do trials. I'm not saying that it couldn't. Others will. So, but it could do trials in both normal and veteran, and possibly hard mode, depending on the trial itself, and the setup you go with in traits and stuff like that. But other than that, I mean, everything that this build is made to do, it does really good. So, 2240, weapon damage, 22% weapon, critical that can be adjusted, 1441 spell damage, 13% spell critical. We do have a 21,516 spell resist with a almost 21,000 physical resist, and 1320 crit resist, which is the base. Now, I did get asked in another video, do any of your builds work in PvP? Yes, they work in either. It really doesn't. It really depends on what role you want to play and where. So they do work in both. We are running the Lord Mundastone for its primary setup. The Clan Fear is out all the time. You're going to want to use this a lot. And then Tri-Stat Food. Moving on to gear. Starting with the potions and food. Tripods, going to be hands down the best. Tri-Stat Food, Longfin Pasty, Melon Sauce. You guys know the routine. Really good for that stuff. And then let's go ahead and start talking about the sets. So, starting with our monster set. And this is one that I really like for this setup, and that is Shadowrun's set. So the Shadowrun set is really good for how it works. So you wear this, you get a 1-piece bonus of max magicka, the 2-piece bonus. When you take damage, you summon a shadowy Clanfear for 15 seconds. The Clanfear attacks and deals magic damage, 15-13 magic damage, and applies minor maim, reducing the target's damage done by 5% for 2 seconds. The Clanfear can be summoned once every 15 seconds. It's out all the time, because you're going to be the one taking the most damage, so... Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, you're already going to be applying minor maim through other sources. Why use this? The nice thing is that you can actually control what this thing attacks by how you heavy attack. So if you put this on a elite trash mob, like a higher end trash mob or a boss in a dungeon, and trash appears, you can also maim that trash while the Clanfear is maiming that boss. So you don't even have to do both. It works out really well. Alright. So, moving on to the next set, Hunting's Rage. I know a lot of people are going to say, why not Kvetch's Gladiator like you do with most tanks? Hunting's Rage actually works really good with this setup. Primarily because we get a 5% increase in physical damage due to being a Sorc. So having that 300 weapon damage really does help in our own damage dealing. So next set, and this is the one that's going to really throw people off, it's Eternal Vigor. Now this does drop in the Greymoor chapter, I believe. And it's a really interesting one. 2, 3, and 4 piece. Mag recovery, stam recovery, health recovery. On all three, or all three of those set bonuses. The 5-piece, max health, and then the other 5-piece bonus adds 337 stamina and mag recovery while your health is above 50%, and adds 1,011 health recovery while your health is below 50%. It is really hard for you to die with this build. Unless something is doing a one-shot mechanic, most mobs, even bosses, are going to have trouble killing you from just damage itself. But it's also nice having that really good recovery rate, so on top of that. Now going over traits and enchants, starting with our monster set, or helm, chest and legs, we are running tri-stat enchants. This is so we can maximize our magicka health and stamina pools. Primarily health because we are a tank. But it's nice to be able to have a good mix of attributes on any character you play. And the types of food you use and stuff like that also play into it. And that's why we use the tri-stat food, is because tanks primarily use all 3 resources. Their main one is going to be health, with magicka and stamina being secondary, but they still use them. So having a good large amount of resources there can help. The helm and the legs we are using in the invigorating trait. This gives you increased health and stamina, health, magicka, stamina recovery by 16 points. The 2 of them together are 32. Now I want to be clear on this so people understand, because I got told off with my last video that 32 points is nothing. Like, it's literally garbage. But what people don't take into consideration is when you add 10% to those 32, just those 32 points, because those 32 points get added to your base, which is 500 and something recovery out the door, I think, or 300 something recovery out the door. So you get 300 plus recovery, which doesn't seem like much. But when you start adding more and more recovery amounts to it, and more percentage increases from light armor, medium armor, heavy armor, also your CP, and all the other things that you can get, plus the 20% and 10% bonuses of recovery, those numbers climb dramatically. It's no different than adding stats to your character. So it works out really well with this 32 points. Now, more is always better, but for a beginning character, or a new player to the game, these work great. Now, moving on to the chest piece, we are using a reinforce. This, on a heavy piece, is always going to be the best piece to use, reinforced, or your largest resistance piece of armor. So if you're in a full light set, your chest piece. If you're in a full medium set, your chest piece. It's always going to be the chest piece. But when you're using a monster set with a light set, and you have that heavy helm actually gives you more resistances than your chest piece will in light or medium. So it's always good to go with that and take that right trait there to get that highest amount of resistance to give you that greater push to survivability. Alright, moving on to the smaller pieces, and this one should be sturdy as well. I made a mistake, but I left it in because in the last video I was like, well, I'm not going to run back and change it, re-record the video. I left it in because I want to show people I do make mistakes, guys, all the time. So you're going to want to go sturdy on the smaller pieces with the max health enchants, and the reason for this is this maximizes your health as a tank character. If you were going for more of a DPS build, you would put into that stat instead, whether it be magic or stamina. As a tank, you want health. And in the smaller ones, you actually get a quite the larger amount than you would stamina or magicka anyways. So, really nice there. And of course, the sturdy enchant for that reduced block cost. Now, with 4 pieces of this, that is 20% block cost reduction with your shield also. And this one isn't sturdy as well. Sturdy and the champion points, you actually get an 80% or a 40%, sorry, block cost reduction, and then another 30% from the sword and shield. You get a 70% block cost reduction. That means 70% of your resources are saved when you block. Actually, quite a bit. So, yeah. And then, of course, moving now on to the jewelry, we have 2 tri-rune rings with weapon damage. This is going to give you the greater amount of weapon damage. And then the tri-rune stats actually almost mimic the tri-stats. This is 434 stamina and magicka. This is 439 stamina and magicka. And this is 477 health with 482 health down there on these. So it's very similar to a tri-stat, but it gives you just enough to maximize your health pool, maximize your other resources for what you need, no matter what role you're playing. So that's why a lot of times you see me use these tri-stats here. It gives you a wide berth and a good balance of resources that you can utilize in different situations, whether you're solo playing, in group, in a dungeon, or even in a trial. The 2 weapon damage, maximize your damage for when you're playing solo or whatever. And that's what I also meant by the Mundus Stone is optional, like the Thief Mundus Stone if you're going to go for more crit to increase your damage, and then like the Fighter's Guild, you would end up with a 40-something percent, 43% critical. It's really nice. And then last but not least, the necklace is mag recovery. So this is on an infused one, increases the jewelry enchantment effectiveness by 60%. This is regularly 169, it goes to 270, and that gives us that really good amount of mag recovery that allows us to sustain better our magicka, because you don't want to run out. Moving on now to our weapons. Sword is infused with a absorb stamina enchant. Even though we have this high stamina recovery here, I'm going to explain when I show you guys the stamina recovery in the dungeon later, why it's important, why that high recovery is important, why this is important, and other things like being an Imperial is important. Next, the shield tri-stat. It should be sturdy. Again, I left this alone. I didn't want to go in and change these 2 to sturdy. I just said, okay, I'll leave them divines. And again, my preference of play with this build would be all divines. On the small pieces, the shield would be sturdy. But I forgot to turn this to sturdy, so that's my fault. And, you know, but sturdy would be another 4%, and I already explained why it'd be good to have that. Moving on to the bow, we have an infused bow with a crusher enchant. Now, a lot of people are going to say, why not a weapon damage enchant and use crusher on the sword? Because crusher's actually getting the most effect on the bow because it's a two-handed weapon. It actually gains the highest amount of effect on an infused weapon. So that's why it gets 2,108 here, but only 1,000, I think it's, it's like 1,000 something here. So it's better to go with it here. And the crusher enchant is actually really good because it does add that extra physical and spell penetration by 2,108 for 5 seconds, but it actually reapplies every 3. Now that I've shown you that, we're going to go over skills. And as always, always, I say this, and people keep asking me this. I'm actually going to be making a video on a lot of this stuff later on why you need to unlock your active and passive abilities. But we're going to go over this, so make sure you unlock the skills necessary on the bar first, that you see on your bars here, first, then worry about unlocking the rest of your skills. But it's always good to have access to more tools. So having access to the extra skills and active skills, ultimates, and passives of your class, your weapons that you use, which in this case a one-handed sword and shield and a bow, armor, light armor passives, medium armor passives, and heavy armor passives, and then of course like soul magic, you have these. Using the soul magic passives is good. And then the same thing with your fighters guild, mages guild, Psijic order. Unlock as many of the skills and active abilities, ultimates, and passives that you can, because it does add more tools to your arsenal. And then the same thing goes here. But always make sure you get these 2 passives. It's really, really important to have these, especially when you get into max level play. I don't like to call it in-game myself, but when you're in max level play and your character's at their maximum level, having this stuff literally makes a huge difference. So, Assault, Aggressive Horn, Echoing, Razor Caltrops, and Support. Those 3 skills and that passive. And then moving on to racials. We are an Imperial, so talking a little bit about the Imperial. They get toughness, or tough, which increases their max health by 2,000. They get Imperial Metal, which increases their stamina by 2,000. And they get Red Diamond, which reduces the cost of all your abilities by 3%. When you deal direct damage, you heal yourself for 366 and restore 333 magicka and stamina. The effect can occur once every 5 seconds. Now, you guys remember how I was talking about recovery and everything? All this stuff plays into your heavy attacks, and I'll explain that when we're in the dungeon. Alchemy, medicinal use, provisioning, gourmand, and connoisseur. Really important passives, trust me, on the alchemy and the provisioning. And you can do this, like you can unlock these as you progress by working on your crafting, your food crafting and your alchemy crafting. And then like once you hit 50, respec your character and drop the rest of the passives for it that you don't need. Like you only need gourmand and connoisseur unless your character is a food crafter or a alchemy crafter. And you can save that stuff. But really, those are the only things you truly need in that case. So, now, moving on to champion... rewind. I need to do the skills. So the skills we want to have on our bar, starting with the first skill, Pierce Armor, really good skill, does damage, taunts the enemy for 15 seconds. It's not really a great damage skill, but it's a great debuff skill. Because one, it applies that taunt, which isn't a debuff. It is a CC, though. It is a crowd control. And the debuff comes from the minor and major breach you apply, which reduces physical resistance by 2974 and 5948. Now, I do want to be clear on something. Overland mobs have 9,400, I think it is, resistance. I would have to go back and test it again, but they do still have that. That's why overland mobs seem easier to kill than dungeon and trial mobs, and even Cyrodiil mobs, because Cyrodiil mobs even have the 18k resistance. But if you notice, even the health pools of mobs in dungeons match that of the overland mobs in normal difficulty, and it changes in veteran difficulty. In normal difficulty, the overland mobs, or in overland mob difficulty, everything's easier to kill and faster to kill because of it. This applies to all trash, like normal mobs, bosses, world bosses, delve bosses, public dungeon bosses, all that stuff. Dungeons and trials is where the health, like their resistances are more, their damage is more. That's why they seem harder to kill in some cases. But this helps a lot, because that you remove almost their whole resistance in overland, making it easier to kill overland mobs a lot easier. Moving on, we do have the Heroic Slash. This deals damage to a main target only, and then it applies minor maim for 12 seconds, of course reducing their damage by 5%, and you gain minor heroism, granting you ultimate every 1.5 seconds, one ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 12 seconds. So it's a pretty good one. Next up, we have Hardened Ward. This is going to be your primary shield for you and your pet. Especially in Overland, you want your pet to survive. In dungeons, your pet is basically almost immune to all damage. So I say almost because there is still some things that will wipe them out. But the shield does absorb 9,157 damage over 6 seconds, and the damage shield strength is capped at 60% of your max health. But it does apply to both you and your pet. That's the great part. Next up, we have the Unstable Clan Fear. Now, this pet will do damage with the tail swipe to nearby enemy. It'll do like a headbutt to enemies, and then it does a tail swipe. So it does two types of attacks, and it deals damage after 1 second. Once summoned, you can activate the Clan Fear's special ability for 4,094 magicka, healing you for 14,470 health, and the Clan Fear for 7,234. This is awesome. This thing is awesome for that. This is your self-heal, by the way. And then moving on, we have our next ability, which is Bound Armaments. This is one I don't activate too often unless I'm in solo play, but it's nice to have for what it does while slotted. So this thing, after you activate it, and for 40 seconds, light attacks cause you to summon a bound weapon for 10 seconds up to 4 times. You can reactivate the ability for half the cost and arm the weapons, causing them to strike targets for physical damage every 0.3 seconds. And then while slotted, your max stamina is increased by 8%, and your light attacks deal 10% more damage. It's important, guys, to get that damage increase. Absorption Field is the next ability we have here, and this is a great ultimate. A lot of people don't use this enough, in my opinion, in certain situations. I love using it in most situations. But basically, you create a suppression field for 12 seconds, removing and preventing all enemy area of effect abilities from occurring in the area. Enemies within the globe are stunned, while enemy players will be silenced rather than stunned. And then the globe also heals you and your allies for 1,300 health every 0.5 seconds. Moving on to the back bar. First ability we have is Venom Arrow. Great ability for setting enemies off balance and stuff. But first off, it does do damage up front. It does do damage over 10 seconds. And it can, if an enemy is casting an ability and is far enough away, or even up close, you can interrupt them, set them off balance, and stun them for 3 seconds. This is a great skill for PvE and PvP. Next, we have Arrow Barrage. This is just an AoE to keep our Crusher applied. It does do a decent amount of damage every second, but there is a 2-second delay on the activation before the damage is done. Again, we gotta have our Clan Fear on both bars, so it's good to have it back here as well. And then our next skill is our resistance buff, Hurricane. It does deal physical damage in a 5-meter radius to start, and it deals damage every second for 15 seconds, and then it grows in strength, increasing up to 150% more damage and up to 9 meters in size. And then, of course, while it's active, you get the major resolve, which increases physical spell resist by 5,048 or 5,948, and then also minor expedition, increasing your movement speed by 15%. We have the bound armaments here again because we want to keep that 8% max stam at all times, and light attacks bonus damage is always nice. And then, of course, last but not least, everybody's favorite tank ability, Aggressive Horn. So this one, you basically blow the horn, increasing everyone's max magic and stamina by 10% for 30 seconds. You and your allies gain major force, increasing your critical damage by 20% for 10 seconds. Now, this does apply to you as well, by the way. So that is it for the skills. Now jumping over to CP. Starting with the red tree, we have 56 in the Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. 20 in the spell shield, increasing your spell resistance by 1900. We have 31 in the thick skin, reducing damage from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 in the hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 10%. 43 in the Elemental Defender, reducing damage taken from Flame Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 40 points in the Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%. And 18 into Heavy Armor Focus. This increases your physical resistance by 1729 while wearing 5 or more pieces of heavy armor. Moving on, we have 40 in the Warlord. This reduces the cost of Break Free by 16%. We have 16 in the Sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%, and 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. Moving on to the middle tree, we have 43 in Arcanus. This increases your mag recovery by 10%, and then 75 in the Tenacity, increases the magic and stamina of your fully charged heavy attacks return by 14%. Moving on over here to the last green tree, we have 40 in the Tumbling, reducing dodge roll cost by 16%, and 40 in the Shadow Ward, reducing block cost by 16%. You remember how I said if you have the 4 body pieces with Sturdy, the smaller pieces, traits, that'll give you a 20% block cost? Or 16% block cost. And with this, it's 34 or 34 or 32%. Then you add the 4% from the shield being sturdy, and that increases that to almost 40%. And then you add 30% from your passives in the sword and the shield, and that takes it up to 70%. A lot of stuff to talk about, man. Moving on to the blue tree, 43 in the Blessed, increasing your healing done by 10%. Moving on the middle tree, we have 35 in the Physical Weapon Expert. This increases light and heavy attacks of your one-handed sword and shield and bow by 20%. And then 40 in the Master at Arms, increasing your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. Final tree, we have 56 in the Mighty. This increases physical poison disease damage done by 12%. And we also have 56 in Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 20%, and then 40 in the Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time effects by 16%. Excuse me. Alright, and that is it for the CP. I'm pretty sure you guys would like to see how this build works and looks in a dungeon. So we're going to go ahead and jump over the Depths of Malatar, and this is again just to show you how a build would work in a, not only a group setting, but also a solo effect. But remember what I was saying about dungeon, the difference between dungeon and overland mobs? You have to take that into consideration that I'm going in here solo. Okay? So these things have 18k resistance. They deal more damage than overland mobs. And we have a boss with 1,000,000 health. So 1,000,009, I believe. Pretty tough guy. Alright, so the great thing about this dungeon is it doesn't take too long to get to the boss, and I will make it there. It might take a little bit because this is a tank and it's not a DPS, but we're going to play it like a DPS for now. So first off, buffs, everything like that. Use your shield and also use your pet. If your pet is taking damage, you're going to be taking damage. Or if you're taking damage, your pet can heal you. So it's always good to do that. And it's good to use shields. It's one of the things that I said why it's good to have that really good high recovery. So I'm going to go ahead and use this. And remember what I said about that clan fear, the shadow clan fear? It will always be up if you are tanking properly. So, really, really cool on that. I'm gonna go ahead and give my buff. As you can see, my max stamina and max magicka are pretty good right now. Now, talking about the resources, remember what I said, it's really important to have a good high stamina resource recovery, and I'll show you why when I get to the final guy in this room, the archer back there. Alright, so now that I've got that done, watch this. I'm going to use up a lot of stamina really quick so I can get a lot of burnt out stamina so I can just show you guys. So I'm going to heavy attack. Now watch how much I get. If you notice, I get over like almost 2 or 3,000, some close to 3,000 back. And that's because when you heavy attack, you get a certain base amount of resources back. Like a flat amount. So when you do that, it takes 1 second now to do a heavy attack. But it takes 1 second to activate an ability as well. So that's 2 seconds. So if you activate an ability and then go into a heavy attack, that is 2 seconds. So in that 2 second mark span, you are getting 1,255 resources back as well. But because you are a red or an Imperial, you also get the Imperial racial every 5 seconds of red diamonds. So you get another 333 stamina and magicka back. So not only do you get the high magicka return, you get the high stamina return when you heavy attack. So it's really good to know how to keep your resources coming in. Alright, now we got the big here. I did the wrong thing. Now the great thing about this build is it can actually absorb quite a bit of damage with the shield alone, and you can notice that my magicka comes back pretty decent, at a pretty decent rate. I'm gonna go ahead and pop my shield and then do that, do my shield again, do that. Because all I have to worry about is really keeping him taunted. Now I'm gonna go ahead and let him kill me. So, but watch how much health I start getting back. It's like his stuff doesn't even, like, if you notice, I'm getting like a chunk back every 2 seconds because of the high health recovery I get when I drop below 50% health. But then I lose stamina and mag recovery. So it's kind of that, like, a negative trade-off. But that's pretty much it for the Oblivion Night, guys. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. And if you do subscribe, I do suggest clicking the notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. It's kind of a mutual trade-off there. We both help each other. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.